confidence provided by the social movements of that time.
It's very difficult to really describe New College. It was certainly a product of the times and of the place we were in, which was San Francisco. We had a lot of people who really, truly wanted to make a difference and who thought they could make a difference and who were willing to make choices that would not end up with them having a lot of money or being superstars in the corporate world. And they were making personal choices to really try to help people.
I remember one of my most significant experiences at New College was I was a part of a study abroad trip that was during the summer, where we flew down into Arizona. We were studying what's called riparian rights. It's basically access to water rights. It's something that we traditionally don't really think about, but it's something that has a huge impact on our lives here in the United States and on an international level. And we did a trip down to Arizona, and we eventually, we started in Yuma, and there's this, the Colorado River, which is one of the most important rivers in North America. And we were in Arizona, we saw these like houseboats and people on jet skis and everything, and then we drove into Mexico, into Sonora, and we literally saw how that river had been diverted with something called the All-American Canal. And we were able to speak with different government agencies from Mexico, the United States, Border Patrol, and just kind of local conservationist groups as well, to see the impact of this All-American Canal and how this water that used to have this, we used to support this kind of flourishing community within Mexico. There was a fishing community, how that community was essentially destroyed by this All-American Canal, which diverted water west to support cities like Phoenix, Arizona, even as far as Los Angeles, areas that really weren't meant to be habitable. But you know, they built this canal to make them as such. And that's kind of what the spirit of New College is. It's like, you know, really taking the law and expanding what it's all about, you know, and providing a voice, not even on a local level, but on a, you know, a nationwide level and an international level, you know, just studying how the law impacts people.
College of California, you're required to do 600 hours of apprenticeship. And I went to La Raza Centro Legal, and I worked in the Workers' Rights Clinic. And I handled a bunch of labor commission, wage claims, Department of Fair Employment and Housing, discrimination claims. I negotiated settlements with big employers, with groups of, there was this one particular group that I loved. These were Salvadorian men, and there were about 10 of them. And they had problems with management within the organization. Well, the owners of the company flew out and they met with me, and we worked it out. We squashed whatever it was, and these guys, they noticed right away from night and day that conditions had changed.
Labor law was something, and employment law were fields that I was very
Hi, everyone. My apologies. I'm not sure what happened there. And have folks been able to hear? Perry was telling me the sound quality hasn't been that great. Are folks able to hear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to start to
fine.
share again, and hopefully we can pick up where we left off. And somehow my Wi-Fi must have stopped. So here we go.
Annette, you might want to move it back or forward a frame.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The owners of the company flew out and they met with me, and we worked it out. We squashed whatever it was, and these guys, they noticed right away from night and day that conditions had changed.
labor law was something, and employment law were fields that I was very
Right, forward.
Maybe forward. Yeah. everyone, I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure why the film is just circling like that. It just doesn't seem to be.
Were fields that I was very
Any,
Exhausted my suggestions. Anyone else?
just give it a minute to catch up, right? That's what you're saying, Marjorie.
I wonder, Nanette, if it would make a difference if Kathy ran it. Kathy?
I wish I could figure out how to share it. I
Oh,
can
okay.
run it, but yesterday when we were doing it, I couldn't find the audio button, but I can share it, what's on my screen. But I'm
Yeah,
worried.
no, sorry. Let me see. Yeah,
Try
I'm
moving
gonna exit.
try
I'm gonna
moving it ahead
stop.
a whole minute.
What'd
Try
you say,
moving
Bruce?
it ahead- Try moving it ahead a whole minute. Just see if you can get out of this.
Okay, okay, out of this loop with this
Yeah.
particular. Yeah, because before he comes on, it's
Centro
fine.
Legal, and I worked in the workers' rights clinic.
Just try
And
again.
I handled a bunch of labor commission, wage claims, Department of Fair Employment and Housing, discrimination claims. I negotiated settlements with big employers, with groups of, there was this one particular group that I loved. These were Salvadorian men, and there were about 10 of them. And they had problems with management within the organization. Well, the owners of the company flew out and they met with me, and we worked it out. We squashed whatever it was. And these guys, they noticed right away from night and day that conditions had changed.
labor law was something, and employment law were fields that I was very
Friends, it maybe it's the video itself. I'm not sure. That's a
What about
possibility.
rebooting?
Well, I
Try
don't know. I'll try to share it from my computer, Nanette.
Okay,
I'm gonna give it a try.
all right. If not, we'll perhaps stop there. We've seen a fair amount and
Right.
talk. Have Chris talk with us a bit.
Okay, now I just have to figure out how to get the the sound. I can just hear the sound.
If you
Wait a second. Hold on a second.
if you go to the three dots and then you enable the
Can you hear it?
no.
Okay.
There's three dots on top, and it says there's an option that says share computer sound.
Went into the office and I met with 3 students. New
Okay,
College
you
was
still can't
basically
hear it,
run
right?
by the
Yeah, we can hear
I
it.
can
We
hear
can
it.
hear it now. We just can't
Don't
see
see
it.
it.
had completed
Okay,
their
I
first
will put
year.
it on the right. I will
And
put
they
it.
asked me why I
I'll
wanted
move
to
ahead.
become a lawyer and why I went.
Okay.
Were fields that I was very interested in. I worked in the restaurant industry from the age of 16. I worked my way through law school, working in the restaurant
You
industry.
have to share
And
the
I could
screen.
see
We
the
can't
inequities,
share
see it.
screen,
You have to
disparities
share
of
your
pay and the
screen.
disparities of
What?
You have
Can
to
you share
share
the
your
screen?
screen. We can hear it, but can't see it.
Oh, you're kidding. My goodness. I thought I just shared it. That's a riot. Okay.
Okay, you got it.
Okay.
Now
Okay.
move it to the middle so we can try to pick up where we left off. Once you get it rolling.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
prestige of different parts of the business. And
Thank you.
interested in. I worked in the restaurant industry from the age of 16. I worked my way through law school working in the restaurant industry, and I could see the inequities and the disparities of pay and the disparities of prestige of different parts of the business. And this fellow worker, Anatole, got me involved in organizing for Local 2. And there was this nascent organizing struggle going on with this particular small restaurant chain in San Francisco. And we had a series of, we call them protests, where somebody invented the wonderful concept of coffee ins. Union members would go into the restaurant very subtly, just as customers, and order a cup of coffee. And the restaurant was kind enough to give us free refills. So we sat there drinking coffee for hours and hours and hours. And that was a form of social, of labor organizing to put pressure on the company, because at that time they were involved in contract negotiations, and they weren't going well. The company was being taken over by the founder's son, and he made it his business to break the union.
I do that very literally. I help people whose day-to-day survival is in question because if they lose their housing and they're on their streets. And I think we need to help that person, and we need to shake up the entire system so that everybody has housing and it's not a question of profit and privilege.
Restorative justice embodies the principles of New College in the sense that it places the humanity of each individual as primary, not your status in society or what value you bring, or are you a contributing member to society, but that you as a human being have value.
Yeah, when I was on the school board, I know there were from peer courts for the middle school students to others to promote a South Africa liberation idea of healing, and to bring people together to build community out of tragedies and crime. But I think restorative justice, at least in the city too, we see it in the sheriff's department's policies to dialogues about, do we build a new jail or renovate it for much less capacity so that we have alternative programs based in the community that can help people heal, but also give people the skills to move beyond incarceration. So I think New College brings me back to just thinking outside of the criminal justice box, supporting it in the schools from the middle school level to restorative justice within our criminal justice system in the city of San Francisco as well.
Why did I write a book? Because every time I brought someone in, the most law and order, preconceived ideas, I don't care about these people, it always blew their mind. It changed them. So I wanted to write, I couldn't bring everyone in, so I wanted to, if I did my job right, I wanted to bring the jails and all of our initiative to the reader, to show them what we have seen over 3 decades now. Most jails and prisons are monster factories. Restorative justice, this is a justice that instead of deepening the conflict between the parties, it seeks to bring social peace. Instead of being so concerned with retribution, it seeks healing. You could say that the retributive justice system, which is a dominant justice approach, responds to the initial harm with more harm. So you could say ours is a system that harms people who harm people to show that harming people is wrong. And of course, that only adds to harm. As Dr. King says, hatred cannot drive out hatred. That will only increase hatred in the world. Only love can drive out hatred.
Slavery lasted in America for 246 years, from 1616 up until Abraham Lincoln freed the slave with the executive order in January of 1865. But those 246 years were met with resistance every day. It was met with little Davids fighting multiple Goliaths every day. And we have to continue that fight. This fight will not be over until everybody on this planet is free and can operate in freedom. Freedom from pollution, freedom from oppression, freedom from racism, freedom from sexism, freedom from the kind of oppression that we around the world now, we little people are suffering.
We can be the architects of the new American jurisprudence. And we live in a time today where I think it's obligatory on those of us who profess to be progressive attorneys to figure out the ways that we can go from individual cases to being at the forefront of transforming the entire society.
There once was a union maid who never was afraid of the goons and the ginks and the company finks and the deputy sheriffs who made the raid. She went to the union hall when the meeting it was called. And when the deputy sheriff came round, they always stood her ground. No, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. No, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Kathy, for
Glad we
rescuing us
finally got it
there.
done.
Yeah, and apologies, everyone. I'm not sure what happened. I usually have good Wi-Fi here at my office. So, friends, I want to turn it over now, without further ado, to Chris Kanios to share some reflections on his experience at New College and what the model legal education was. And
Okay. Yeah, I'm quite a New College person, actually. I was a student there. I started there in 1976 when the school was only 3 years old. But a lot of us at the time, I was quite young then, we were attracted to a place that wanted to focus on public interest law. This was a very dynamic time in our history, right? With the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement. There was a strong push, as many of us remember, for this public interest law movement. I mean, it's always been there, but it was another push, especially when, Nixon's White House was full of elite lawyers stepping on the Constitution. So a lot of people thought we should be training people to be better lawyers and more ethical lawyers and more public interest minded. So I was there from 76 to 80 and had quite a good experience. I graduated practice law for a little while and then was invited back to teach. And then there was an opening in the dean's job. And as I like to say, this was not a national search, okay? This was not a national search for the next dean. And I filled the spot. But I'm proud that I lasted 10 years, which is pretty amazing at a place like New College, actually. We had, I think, 11 deans in the first 15 years, something like that. And in any event, for those folks who may not be as old as some of us, I think it's important to realize that New College was one of a handful of pioneers trying to do something different in the 70s. So that, and this was across the board. There were lawyers wanting to practice differently. And all of a sudden there was a popping up of law collectives where lawyers were not just going to be practicing a different type of law or focusing on public interest, community service, neighborhood-based, right, civil rights-oriented, legal services-oriented, but they're also going to practice law in a different way. They wanted to have different types of relationships in the office. And also, so challenging a lot of the professional elitism and formalities was also part of the movement. So in addition to how you practiced, it was what you practiced and how you practiced. And that kind of also transferred over into law schools, where there were a handful of law schools. I think Antioch, which, then moved to DC, was perhaps the first. We were like a year later that New College popped up. And there was always People's College down in Los Angeles. I think they're still running. And then New College, we started in 1973. So what we did that seemed a breakthrough as some kind of alternative in legal education, I think is now taken for granted. there's no big deal. That, yes, we had this particular focus on public interest law, that we were going to attract students who wanted to practice in that area, who wanted to be community-based lawyers, legal services lawyers, public defenders, and civil rights lawyers, to move in that area. And you wanted a school that would support that effort, expressly support that effort, not as something, oh, that's nice, but, you know, that's good. We have a little pocket of activity over here of people doing interesting things. But this was integral into the whole mission of the school. So you had faculty that reflected that, who came in, who were primarily practitioners, not professors. But, you know, Peter was the exception in that regard, because, you know, Peter was the scholar, and he didn't practice. Yeah, Peter had never practiced. But he knew that, you know, law school, legal education was an important place to try to have some impact. So we had the public interest focus, which these days, I think every law school in the country has at least a program or two and advertises different things they do. And it does, it responds to the real interests of students who come in wanting to have that as part of their work. We emphasize skills training, which back then was not in existence at traditional schools. And we had several components to it. We had the in-class practical skills, you know, a trial advocacy course and law and motion courses in the classroom. We also had on-campus clinical programs, where we actually had two strong clinical programs, and they focused on, one was on criminal defense, and the other was on eviction defense. And so law students would work with one of our faculty, who was a, you know, practicing attorney doing cases. But the centerpiece of the practical skills training that we had was what we called the apprenticeship program, I guess, to give it a kind of an interesting twist. It was really an internship program, an off-campus internship program. And one of the speakers mentioned that a requirement of graduating from New College was that every student would have to complete, and we got academic credit for it. This was built into the program. So it wasn't an add-on, it was integral to the units that you were earning for your graduation. It started, when I started, it was 800 hours. I had to log 800 hours of attorney supervised work in a public interest law setting. So it's not just skills training, it's within the public interest law setting. So what did that do? It gave us great training and education to be in law offices and agencies, dealing hands-on with cases. And it provided, it fulfilled our mission to be a responsible member of the community and provide community services, all right? So instead of having a law school kind of isolated away from the world, isolated away from people who badly needed legal services, we'll have law students providing legal services in the community. This was a fantastic part of what we were doing. And third, which helped a school like ours, and it helped me, and I know it helped countless others, it integrated you into the legal profession. You started to know all these lawyers. They started to know you, so that when time came for a possible employment situation, you weren't just a resume, you were a known commodity. And typically what happened, so I was working for this labor firm representing maritime unions and doing plaintiff's personal injury work. And that, oh, I loved it. I just lived down there, you know, in that office. That was just phenomenal for this law student that I was. And then when I graduated and got admitted, lo and behold, they're looking for an associate attorney. Hello, right? And they hire me, right? Now, you know, from a non-ABA, you know, state accredited school, was able to get work. So our folks, our graduates, always kind of had to find their way, because we did not enjoy any kind of, you know, on the prestige level of things, right? There, and even I have to say, even within the progressive community, right? And everybody knows this, even within the progressive legal community, there were plenty of people who were hanging on to their elitist values, and they just do. And the way in which they see themselves, the way in which they see themselves to the people who work in their office and their clients, and so that, you know, law students applying for clerkships, internships, they're coming from, you know, an Ivy League school for the summer. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have them with us, you know? and impressed by all of that, which is fine. But as opposed to folks maybe coming from a place like New College that wasn't so well known. So, so the public interest focus, the skills orientation, the diversity issue. I realize, and people don't realize that back in 1973, I had to look this up. Only 5% of the lawyers in America were women in 1973, and only 20% of the law students were women. And so I remember on some of our advertising stuff, it was also about attracting women to law school, where now women make up 55% of law school as law school students. So there's just this big transformation. So we also tried to change the way we operated as a school. Kathy mentioned a lot of student involvement in governance, also in our policies. We could not, for instance, we could not comply with ABA requirements. It was just going to be beyond us. I mean, one was a financial requirement. The other was just policies. And, from LSAT profiles to bar pass rates, which to this day absolutely handcuff and corrupt, in my opinion, the legal education across the board in ABA schools, because it's unavoidable that schools have to be very attentive to those regulations. And so it dictates admissions, it dictates academic standards, it dictates faculty. It's a really, really significant issue to deal with if you're going to be trying to transform legal education. But there is one thing that I think, to me, is kind of interest in what Nanette was talking about, perhaps, and what all of you, so many of you folks involved in law schools, experienced in law schools, that when I look back at the historical context of New College and what we tried to create, and I think we did some things great. I think, and seeing this film and seeing all of these alumni who really are doing great work in the community and carry that with them, it's really beautiful. I feel very proud of it, to have helped that along and to have been a part of it, which I'm grateful for. But despite the recent efforts, even at New College, the later efforts to try to integrate more restorative justice, mediation-based, collaborative law-based values into the curriculum, New College, and from its roots in the 70s, was still primarily an adversarial training ground. That we got people in there who wanted to change society through the adversarial system, through lawsuits, we had a lot of anger. We knew who the bad guys were, and we wanted to go after them, and we wanted to protect people from them as well. And that really was the dominant model that we had. The skills training was all adversarial. I was there in the 70s when Gary Friedman, some of you know Gary, and he's participated with PISLAP. Gary came in and offered a course on mediation. And he claims this was one of the first times in the country that a mediation class was offered in a law school, right? Well, I remember that. And my attitude was, what the heck I want to take that for? I have no interest in that at all. Are you kidding? I want to sue people, I'm just, right? It just looked like a different world at the time. Now, that was in the 70s. Things changed. People like Sunny Schwartz, the woman who was talking about her work with the jails. This is like a superstar beyond superstars as far as the work that she's done in the jails and incorporating restorative justice values into the jails. But I have to tell you, that was outside of New College, wasn't inside of New College, right? It was some of what our people were doing outside, right? So Fania came in to do a restorative justice course, which is great. But, Peter and I, for years, our challenge was, because we had our own perspectives that we thought would be important to try to incorporate into our classes in the classroom. Our challenge was, how do you bring this stuff into a traditional doctrine course that these students are eager to learn really well the fundamentals, because they're going to get tested on the bar exam, a torts class, a contracts class. How do we bring in different interesting political perspectives into those courses and kind of capture and still, maintain the interest and attention of students? How do we do that? So we had to spend a lot of time, and we had supplemental readers, we did all the kinds of different stuff and this and that. Because the easier model, which I think a lot of schools are just kind of, you take it outside. You have an elective on law and social justice, right? You have an elective on a civil rights. I mean, some of these topics, of course, you have to have plenty of time to dive into them, but they're often treated outside the real thing, contrast property, con law, remedies, all that kind of stuff. So that was always a challenge as far as how do we incorporate it into the class itself? How do we show what certain policies, how that reflects on different values in society that maybe people should consider changing? So to me, one of the issues thinking forward is, everybody in the room knows this adversarial model with whatever value and importance it has in our system under certain circumstances and certain unavoidable circumstances. People are looking for a different model. People are looking for a collaborative model. People are looking for a different way for people to resolve differences and problems, right, and conflicts. And that's where PISLAP's influence, I think, can be really important, because our job back then, I felt, was to try to infiltrate the profession. We wanted to infiltrate the profession with warrior lawyers who were going to fight for social justice and fight for change. All right, that was part of the banner, right? And now I think that the more lawyers who graduate from law schools all over the country, the more lawyers who enter the profession, who infiltrate the profession, knowing what you all know about the shortcomings of the adversarial system and the value of having a collaborative, mediation-based, alternative conflict resolution-based system, that is going to be critical, I think, because then those folks in different positions have a chance to influence how conflict is resolved in different settings. But, DC School of Law is still going. I don't know what's happening with some of these places. CUNY started up later. They're still going. New College we lasted 35 years. And I'm proud of that. We were a product of our time. I think it would be difficult for a place like New College to exist today. The demands, the costs, the compliance that you have to engage with. But it was a great period of time, and a lot of great people getting together trying to do good work. So I think that's it. And don't give me any more time.
Chris. That's a lot. That's a
Okay.
lot. That's a lot. No, thank you. You've given us a lot of food for thought, and just want to open it up. I'm sure the people have comments, reflections. Lisa.
I just wanted to jump in because Kathy, Chris, and I were at San Francisco State University last week, where the whole film was shown, or the first 45 minutes. And there were people in the audience who were like, are there any schools left like that? What do we do? They really wanted to do something like that again. And so I'm just saying this because some of the folks who were at New College School of Law don't quite have the energy to start over. But if anybody here does, or anybody knows anyone who wants to, there are students out there who will go. And I thought that was great. Peter, of course, wanted to, because he always doesn't care how old he is or how much has happened already. He wanted to start the law school again, and he was looking for fellow travelers to do that. And I wished he'd been there to see those folks in the audience, because he would have had some comrades to start over. So just want to say, oh, and one other thing is I was a union organizer for almost 40 years, and my union was the union that Janowicz was talking about, where he was a plant, we call him a plant, or a salt or a submarine, where he went in and was a part of the organizing when he was 16 or whatever it was. But we always wanted New College students to be our interns in our in-house law practice, because they were great. They were radical. They were hardworking. They were tough. And I realize that's old school now, but we always wanted them. And we had probably 5 different in-house lawyers who were new college grads.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Lyle.
Thanks. I'm going to have to leave shortly, but I just think that's wonderfully impressive. And there's an element that the film illustrated, which I hope might be part of a conversation later, which is figuring out how to get elements of New College into the conventional legal academy. And the site visit to the canal, I'm sorry, I'm on the East Coast, so I don't get the full significance until you showed that image. But the diversion of the Colorado River is really a stunning example of both law and policy at work and affecting people that we don't even think about. And unfortunately, so I hope that when the conversation continues, there can be some thought about picking out pieces of this model that might be transferable, notwithstanding the fact that a wholesale enterprise like this may be difficult to start. And by the way, I think I'm the oldest person on this call. So Marjorie, you have to wait. So anyway.
Okay. Thanks, Lyle. And Lisa, just to mention that Peter did frequently speak about the idea of starting a new law school. Yeah, definitely.
And can you, just one other thing, if you can send an email with those links, it's hard to take it off an iPhone, which is what I'm unfortunately working on. I don't know how to do that.
Which links, Lyle? Which links?
The links to the videos, they're in the chat, but I don't know how to take a chat and make it something else.
Oh, okay, sure. I'll.
I mean, maybe other people do. I just don't listen.
No, that's fine. We can. Oh, the full. Yeah, sure. We'll send that out. Absolutely.
Yeah, Peter and I disagreed about restarting New College.
Yeah,
I said, hey, I'll teach for you, but I'm not I can't get into the into the day-to-day. Listen, like a lot of lefty organizations, it can be very difficult. It can be very difficult. And you know, and I think we all know that organizations basically have kind of 2 sides, you know, like there's the student side and the student experience, and the students had a lot of amazing experiences. And then there's the side of people who are working there every day, trying to keep the doors open and trying to make sure everything works well. And that's a different experience as far as, you know, how that goes. And, you know, it's Antioch. I read about Antioch, you know, they had their struggles. They had their struggles to keep things going well. And you know, when you're a smaller private outfit trying to make everything work and you don't have a lot of significant funding, life can be difficult. You know, so it's one of those challenges. It's one of those challenges. But yes, I mean, it'd be beautiful if there was a younger generation of folks who had that spirit and drive. And, you know, there's one great quote in the film where Roberta Achtenberg, who was a former dean, really great person, she said, well, we didn't know we couldn't do it. We didn't know we couldn't do it. So we just went ahead and did it, you know, and it was that kind of, you know, spirit that really did keep the place moving forward for so long.
And there are so many elements of New College that are already, I mean, I would imagine, you know, I know there's a number of law teachers here, people are bringing it into their own schools. I had one comment, Chris, about this comment of this concept of, you know, the warrior lawyer versus the, you know, sort of mediation collaborative lawyer, because you know, I've been trying to I have started a mediation program in legal services in New York City. And, you know, a lot of people did have that mindset. And it wasn't until, because they are warrior lawyers, it wasn't until they actually started doing mediation that they realized that actually it's every bit as complicated, as deep, and as you're as much a warrior lawyer really doing that kind of work, because the peacemaking can be so difficult, as we all know.
Yeah, I agree. I agree entirely with you. You know, the idea that alternative dispute resolution is not a required course in law schools is ridiculous. But that's what the bar exam does. The bar exam dictates what's going to be a required course, as opposed to what you think every person who graduates from this place should have some experience with. How could you graduate somebody to be a lawyer and not have them be familiar with alternative dispute resolution, mediation? You know, I years later, 20 years later, 30 years later, I took one of Gary Friedman's workshops, and I was blown away. I was like, oh, shoot. You know, how come I didn't know this before? I thought you just either had to win or walk away, you know, or whatever. So no, I agree entirely. I think it should be an integral part of legal training, 100%. And it is in many ways far more difficult than adversarial work. Absolutely.
As much. Thank you, Chris. Duncan and then Bonnie.
Bonnie was actually ahead of me, but looks like she took down her
I didn't
hand.
notice.
So did you still have a question, Bonnie?
I was actually going to ask almost exactly or comment exactly what Nanette was saying about the idea of the warrior lawyer and that contrast. So that would be a really good, since we both had that thought, to bring up in the next discussion. I was just typing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
And I wanted to shift a little bit to another dimension. It's interesting to me that listening to Chris and to watching that section of the movie, that there was a lot of emphasis on leftist politics. And I think from where I'm coming from, one of the reasons that I did not practice as an attorney was because I'm more focused on the respecting other people as human beings, part of what Peter was really focused on. And it strikes me that that's really non-ideological, that it has to do with relational skills, understanding how to care for one another, understanding that the law can basically be a caring profession rather than a combative warrior-based profession. But I mean, that's a part of what I'm interested in. It's curious to me. I hope it makes sense what I'm pointing out, right? That it's not necessarily leftist ideological if what you're focusing on is the quality of the human relationships.
Yeah. I think that's a big discussion for this group, because for many people, I mean, I agree with you. I would want anybody who's serving as a counselor at law, right? As an attorney, as a lawyer. I'd want anybody in that setting to have a certain skill set and perspective that was obviously respectful of others and trying to have a healing attitude. On the other hand, I cannot help but walk in a world where power dynamics are overwhelming in many situations, and that participating to get a good result, let's say on an individual conflict, may not respond to the larger framework of power imbalances and dynamics that make you feel like there is something to to move against, which does, at least for a lot of us, for myself, just because the way I've been socialized, indoctrinated, or whatever my whole life, that I can't help but see that in so many ways, that a system that promotes and glorifies unbridled greed should be addressed in some way, the system right now. And if that could be done, which it would be beautiful to see, if that could be done in a truly more, in a way where human dignity is really regarded and respected all around, that'd be beautiful. That'd be phenomenal. In the meantime, you're worried about people getting hurt, and so I think it's an important conversation to have, and to see if, to see how perhaps different perspectives can coexist in that way. I'm not sure. I think that sometimes, these culture clashes are difficult sometimes, if that's what they amount to. But it's important, very valuable, very important. And listen, I have huge criticisms of lefty lawyers. Okay, it's not, just because you're doing so-called public interest work doesn't mean you're conducting yourself well or doing the right thing or modeling good behaviors. Absolutely not. I just want to say, so when we were law students, we had the inside scoop on which lawyers were like good human beings and would, practice them, treat their clients well, treat their offices well, all of it like that, as opposed to those who were just carrying on these elitist, arrogant values into their practices, but they called themselves public interest lefty lawyers, as if, that was some kind of shield from something. So and this was what I was mentioning earlier, it's just not the type of cases you work on, but it's the way in which you work on them, that is really, really significant. And I think that, and that was a struggle. It was a struggle, and I'm sure it exists for all of us in a certain way. Like, it's a struggle for those of us socialized in a certain way, not to carry a lot of that implied, unconscious elitism into what we do when we're sitting there as the professional, as the highly educated one, as the one who is convinced that we know the right way to go, and we're dealing with other folks, right? So trying to be aware of that, like a new college, we're trying to deal with a lot of contradictions and just trying to walk through them as best we could, knowing that they're there, and then they're totally there. But yeah, and it's a very, very important point.
Chris, I know we're pretty much reaching the end of our time, but just wanted to see if anyone else had a reflection they wanted to share before we go.
Well, just a question, Chris. I've heard people, Peter and other people talk about this over the years, but I never got clear exactly what brought things to a halt. Did you still have student demand? Was it the ABA? Did you lose some funders? What changed in 2007?
I mean, the short answer is I think it was a perfect storm of problems that even kind of converged at the same time. Small private state accredited schools like New College, I think we're struggling with enrollment as far as, being a tuition-based school. Financially was always a struggle. Put a lot of stress on the place. And then, lefty places like a lot of other organizations, they're also famous for some infighting because, we all know the right way to go. And we try to impose that on our comrades, sometimes not in a very good way. So there was some internal stuff. That was getting very contentious. And yes, the accreditors started to pay too much attention. And, I had a lot of experience with it was really the college as a whole. Law school is only a piece of New College. And so it was the college as a whole that basically was having these problems. The law school itself actually was kind of doing fine, and it was fine with its own accreditation with the state bar. But, my experience with accreditation was that when the accreditors are supportive of your mission, as they were for so many years with the law school, actually, the state bar accreditors, they're not nitpicking you over something. They're pointing something out and then saying, okay, we'll come back and check in on this. When they get down on your case, which I think is what happened with the college as a whole, that the WASC accreditors, Western Association of Schools and Colleges out here, they got down on New College for a variety of reasons. And that's when every single regulation that wasn't perfect starts getting dinged. And then you're on probation. And now it's a struggle to get back. And then students hear you're on probation and they don't want to enroll. And it just starts going like this. So I do think, although it was a very complex dynamic, I think that it was this kind of perfect storm of experiences. Kathy and Lisa can correct me or have a different version or vision of things. And it was very sad. Come on. And I have to tell you, by then I had moved to a different state credit school. I had done my 25 years and I moved to a different place over in the East Bay. Always still a New College person and loving and supporting New College. I was convinced they'd pull it out. Because we always did. Of course we did. That's what we did. We had crises and we pulled it out. And so it was sad that it couldn't work. It couldn't work out. So.
Well, it's a great story, and thank you for trying.
Okay.
No, thank you, just to say what what a beautiful, idealistic path it was for a really long period of time. That's 35 years. It has real staying power with all the struggles, and it's a very, very impressive endeavor, and that I'm sure the ripple effects are just endless in terms of the impact that New College had, the law school had on many, many lives. So I know, Fred, I know we could go on for a bit, but I just want to stop here and really thank Kathy for both introducing the trailer and creating the trailer, and Chris very much for his talk and reflections and contribution to New College. And please join us back on April 25th when we'll take some of these ideas that Chris and all of us have been talking about and give some thought to renewing our current law schools and what can be done. There's Twyla saying, let's talk about the warrior lawyer, relational, that sounds great, Twyla. So please join us, everyone, and great to be with you. So
Thank you.
I'm sorry for the technical glitches earlier. Be well all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Hey, Twyla.